Our speaker, Simon Bailey, is an experienced brand specialist advising CEOs and senior business leaders on how to use their brands to drive business growth. Simon was formerly the European CEO of Interbrand. Prior to that, he was the UK CEO of WPP agency, the Brand Union. His agency has twice been awarded Agency of the Year by Marketing Magazine. Author of the book Myths of Branding, Simon is a regular speaker and press contributor and is a strong believer in the power of purpose, which he sees as an essential part of business, building successful businesses. Simon will be joined by Adam Rolls, marketing partner for the Caffeine Partnership. Do please put your questions in the chat and Simon and Adam will address these as we go. Simon, a very warm welcome, and we're looking forward to the next 50 minutes.
Hello everybody. Just wanted to check that everyone can hear me okay. Just wanted to say to everybody, first of all, a very warm welcome to today's session. My name is Simon Bailey and I am a partner at the Caffeine Partnership. We're a boutique growth consultancy helping clients to accelerate their business performance and unstick the stuck. We've been operating for approximately 15 years, and during that time, we've helped many companies uncover their purpose. We've also written several books on the subject, one of which shares the topic of today's presentation. Today's session is approximately 40 minutes, hopefully with some time for discussion at the end. And my colleague, Adam, will be collecting your thoughts and observations and questions in the chat function. So please, if you've got a question, put them there and we'll address some at the end. And as many of you as possible, it'd be great to see everybody's faces on the session as well. So if that's possible, it would be great to do that. When we talk about purpose, what we're actually talking about is finding an authentic answer to a simple question that often proves much more difficult for businesses to actually answer. And that is fundamentally, what is it that matters most both to your clients and to your people? And for the avoidance of doubt, the answer to that is never just price. And so what's the reason for the relatively recent or sort of renewed interest in the subject of purpose? Well, we believe that fundamentally, we as people, as customers, we're not just interested anymore in understanding the what your business does or what your business offers. Increasingly, we want to buy the why. We want to understand why you do what you do. And here's a good example, I think, of that. If you can just cast your minds back for a second to 2012, one of the big stories of that year was the arrival of Hurricane Sandy. It was the storm of the century. It caused 85 deaths. It left 8 million people on the east coast of the US without power for several days. But one of the crisis was actually how different businesses at the time chose to respond. Take the American brand American Apparel, for example. It decided that the best way to help its customers was to offer them a 20% discount. So, but actually only to a couple of states and only for 36 hours. You sort of reflect on that for a minute. 85 people have died, thousands of people are homeless. But in the words of American Apparel, in case you're bored during the storm, here's a 20% discount. Now, if you compare that with two different companies, Duracell and Tide, both of these actively came to the help of their citizens and their communities. One offered free mobile charging points and the other a life-saving mobile laundry service. And I think what's really interesting about this is that these two businesses, Duracell and Tide, are linked. They're both owned by P&G. They're owned by a business with a clear purpose and a clear set of values. And the point here is that because they are purpose-driven, they instinctively knew how to respond in a time of crisis. So ask yourself this question: how is your firm faring in the current crisis? Did you and your staff instinctively know how to act when COVID arrived? As the behavioral economist Daniel Pink has commented, when profit is the only thing that matters, bad thing tends to happen. And recent events have taught us as much of that. And just as a kind of an interesting postscript, American Apparel filed for Chapter 11, I believe, in 2014. And let's turn our attention right back to 2020 And actually, you can see this playing out again today. Let's just contrast the behavior of these two different businesses amidst the first wave of the COVID crisis. Now, Pret a Manger, which has been a business which has consistently put pride in what it does and pride in its people before more or less everything else. And guess what? Amidst the early days of the COVID crisis, they were sure-footed. And it seemed that the business almost instinctively knew what to do to help in the relevant way. And it received a lot of credit for the way it responded to customers, NHS workers, and their own staff. Now, you contrast that with Wetherspoon's response and the advice of the Wetherspoon CEO, Tim Martin. His reaction was that staff should probably go and find a job in Tesco's. Now, whatever their original context or sentiment behind that thought, it didn't play very well, especially when he then followed that up with a promise that staff that did leave would probably be first in the queue to be rehired. Then let's just take a moment to look at another purpose business, a very, very well-known business with a clear purpose around making sustainable living commonplace. And let's just see how they've responded to the crisis. Purpose leaves businesses with a North Star, with a really clear sense of how they should react in a crisis. Take another purpose-driven business, Burberry. Burberry has a purpose around creativity, opening spaces, this notion of democratizing what they do. And of course, they've been able to respond in a really interesting way too. They have moved some of their supply chain to the manufacturer of PPE equipment, and they've also sold their own masks and returned all the profits back to charitable concerns. Purpose helps organizations to instinctively know what to do in a crisis. And just to reinforce this point about having something to guide a business over and above the simple pursuit of profit, here's a bit of a rhetorical question as everybody is on mute. But take a look at this number and try and guess what it relates to. And just in case you're unclear, the number here is 43 billion. It's actually $43 billion. And that is what the bank UBS has estimated that Dieselgate is going to finish up costing Volkswagen. So for those unfamiliar with Dieselgate, it was a device fitted to about 500,000 Volkswagen diesel cars in the US that helped them cheat the stringent emission tests. The simple pursuit of profit to the exclusion of everything else can have really bad consequences. Now, to be fair to VW, they have done a lot subsequently to remediate the position, and it's probably helped accelerate the push into electric vehicles. But just in case we're unclear about the damage that it can cause to reputation, here's a post we found from Toxic Tara. For Volkswagen enthusiasts like me, this Dieselgate scandal is like finding out your dad has lied to you your whole life. So even if you are quite cynical about the notion of having a purpose, there are really important reasons why not just pursuing profit is important. Now, look, VW is making some really good strides, as I've said, and this has cost Volkswagen a huge amount of money. But what I think is interesting to reflect on is that a less well capitalized and probably less well supported business would probably have gone under when faced with that kind of cost. When purpose and profit become decoupled, bad things happen. So what about the economic value of purpose? What evidence is there that it exists? Well, for those unfamiliar, I'd ask you to have a look at this after the session today. But the Havas Media Group, among many different types of organization, have found some really interesting evidence to support this idea. So they've run for the last 10 years, I believe, their meaningful brand study. And the 2019 study, which basically asks consumers to rank a mix of different brands and organizations according to those that they believe have the greatest value or meaning for them, turns out that brands that they perceive as more meaningful deliver on average KPI outcomes that are double those of lower scoring brands, and interestingly return a price premium of 40% higher, return a ×9 share of wallet, and outperform the stock market by about 134%. And additionally, I find this really interesting, it turns out that 77% of brands that people use regularly, they would drop in an instant if they were given a more enticing alternative. They're not that loyal. Brands with meaning, however, generate double the repurchase intent. And for those that, again, may have some cynicism towards the relevance of brands in a B2B context, I think this quote from Forbes really kind of reasserts the importance of reputation. Like consumers, professional buyers use the vendor's reputation as a shortcut. It reduces risks and it simplifies the evaluation process. Now, we know that great customer experiences, and to a large extent, as we've seen recently, just by the value of the experience economy to the UK economy, we know that great customer experiences, the ones we celebrate, tend to be emotional, or they have an emotional component. They're consistent, they're differential or distinctive, and they're valuable. But really importantly, you can't be any of those things. You can't deliver a great experience if you're not clear about your purpose and you don't use your purpose to drive intention into the way that you service your customers. A great purpose helps drive choice, and choice is at the heart of really great customer experiences. So how do you approach finding your organization's purpose? What's actually at the heart of this discussion? Well, at Caffeine, we think that a good purpose essentially encompasses three dimensions: the customer, the financial, and the societal. But really importantly, when we talk about purpose, we aren't talking about being CSR led, if you like, this notion of CSR on steroids. That for us most definitely isn't what purpose is about. We're talking about being customer led. If you can address the main things that your customers really care about, you will positively impact all of the dimensions in this diagram. You think about car manufacturers for a minute. One of the biggest impacts on their customers' health is air quality. That's why we worked with Nissan to build a purpose centered around air quality, because that matters most to customers and employees equally. All of us want good quality air that we can breathe in the environments that we live and work. And Nissan can play a meaningful role in that by building better, more efficient, more environmentally friendly cars. They can finish up impacting air quality. It's a credible purpose for their organization. And to that point, here's a cautionary note. And I suppose the cautionary note is beware the elegant metaphor. So 4 of these purpose statements broadly pass our test, but one of them we think isn't really a purpose. We think it's an elegant metaphor. And that one is Uber, because actually we're not convinced that any driver working for Uber really got up out of bed in the morning and thought, today I'm going to make my transportation as reliable as running water. No, we think that's a great metaphor used probably for a prospectus, but we don't think it's as effective as a purpose statement versus some of the other very famous examples on the slide. So what is it that on-purpose brands do? How are they different, and how do they drive this intention through the service experience? Well, we believe that they stand up, they stand out, and they stand firm. These are all hallmarks of purpose-led businesses, businesses that do it on purpose. And we're just going to spend the next few minutes having a look at those. So standing up, the why. The outdoor brand Patagonia probably epitomizes what it means to be purpose-driven. And actually, interestingly, less than about a year ago, they changed their mission from a product purpose hybrid of building the best product and causing no unnecessary harm to a clear purpose-driven message around Patagonia is in business to save our home planet. And of course, they back up that purpose statement with action. They've got their ironclad promise, the idea that they guarantee everything they make. And if you're not satisfied with it, not just within a month or 2 months, for a significant duration of time, if your product doesn't perform, they will take it back and they will repair or replace it. And if they think damage is due to fair wear and tear, they'll just repair your product at a reasonable charge. They've actively promoted the resale of products. So products that are pre-worn and now offered for sale on their website. And they built a unique working culture and working environment that supports colleagues in their endeavors. And importantly, they've doubled down on activism. They put that at the heart of the brand. And the founder, Yvonne, saw an opportunity for activism because a few years ago, the Ventura River, which is close to Patagonia's headquarters, was actually threatened to be diverted. So he went to the town hall to take action. The government officials at the time asserted that the river was dead and that there was nothing to save. He got together with a biology student. They showed that that wasn't the case. They showed how the river could be restored, and essentially the river was saved. And that experience is credited with having fostered the 1% giving program, and now they will actively leverage employees and help them look at where they can invest resources in their local communities. And recently there was an interview with a senior executive, which I thought was quite interesting. And they just said, look, we take the long view. We don't look at everything on a quarterly basis. It allows us to make smarter and more responsible decisions. But I thought this was really interesting. He said, look, we found that when we put the planet first and do the right things for the planet, it winds up being good for business. And it's proven itself over and over again. And their own founder, Von, talks about having a brand purpose or a North Star can have a significant impact on your business. But it can't be a top-down thing. It can't be an invented thing. It has to be based on those ideas of what matters most to customers and employees. If you take an entirely different business for a second, IBM. IBM stood for something clear for over 100 years. It's gone from making typewriters to being one of the most successful consultancy firms on the planet. It's navigated, if you think about it, every major technological change, from punch cards to transistors, to the microchip, to the web, to e-business, to consulting, to big data. IBM is still as relevant now as it was at its inception. And why is that? Why has it been able to navigate all of these changes? Well, fundamentally, we'd argue it's been helped by the fact that it's had a clear purpose for over 100 years, based on its founder's assertion that IBM was there to create information technologies to benefit mankind. So what else do on-purpose brands do? Well, really importantly, they stand out. Tesla's a great example of what we mean by standing out. In any market or sector, the key competitors often quickly finish up looking and sounding like each other. Look at the statements from any high street bank or law firm. They quickly adopt the same language, the same offers, and they tend to coalesce around the same behaviors. How often have you heard about best practice? It's human instinct. But we believe businesses like Tesla, those that do it on purpose, those that are purpose-led, actively seek to do it different, and they avoid best practice, and importantly, have that unique bias for action. They focus on delivering something groundbreaking, and they look at how they can do what they do in a very different way. And Tesla's recent market performance, for all its detractors, is proving many of its skeptics wrong. In mid-January, Tesla's market capitalization reached $107 billion, and it surged past the German auto manufacturer Volkswagen. The biggest challenge that some of those leading automotive manufacturers face is that they don't have the expertise or the affiliation for software and electrical progress in the way that many of the other, in the way that Tesla does. And if you think about this, Elon Musk has finished up turning over a century-old industry in just over 16 years. And there are a number of things I think that Tesla does really well. You know, it develops its cars, as I've just said, as it would a software project. You know, it simplifies the buying process. It puts the customer, really importantly, in control. It thinks about how the customer wants to buy. It's revolutionized the way that cars are sold. And it's leveraged its power, its sort of prowess, if you like, and power and battery technology to minimize not just the total cost of ownership for the vehicle, but importantly, contributing to a broader understanding of how battery power can work and how it can help us reduce global warming. And really importantly, it's got a unique culture. That's partly what's enabled it to be really different. I once listened to a talk by a guy called Georg Eli, and he was the European head of Tesla. He told me a great story, which was that once upon a time, one of the things that Tesla has is they will always escalate issues to the most senior person, most able to sort a problem out most quickly. And two very junior employees didn't go through their manager. They wrote straight to Elon Musk about an aspect of a problem with the gearbox. When the middle manager found out, he fired one of the members of staff for insubordination. And the story goes that once Elon Musk found out that that had happened, he then fired the middle manager and rehired the person that was fired, because fundamentally they were showing the right behaviors. These businesses act differently and they get a different result. I think the other thing that's worth reflecting on as well is that businesses like Tesla are innately human. They've kept the user and the customer in mind from the outset. Things like ludicrous mode, dancing cars. Ultimately, they're building products as well with a personality and with a human touch. Another example, I think, of this is Burberry. So a much loved brand, and one that's become synonymous, as I said earlier on, with democratizing luxury. It's a purpose-driven business seeking to do it differently. And a few years back, we actually worked with Burberry to help them drive this intention into their service experience. We used our proprietary tool to help them identify a clear area where their customers were being underserved, but really importantly, as sort of outlined in yellow, where there was an opportunity to stand out versus their competitive set. Now, each of the points running across the bottom of that chart relate to a different touch point on the customer journey. But the one that's highlighted actually represents the in-store experience. Things like the changing room, the store welcome. All of those things were not working well, and they were leading, importantly, to really poor sales conversion too. So from our research, we finished up identifying the key drivers of the customer retention and advocacy and then we used those to define a Burberry brand promise and a series of clear customer commitments that could be used to practically influence the way that customers were served and the experience that they were welcomed with. And those four areas were about creating welcoming stores, developing a personal service, and that included giving staff the opportunity to buy and wear the product, making the product affordable for them, educating about the product intrinsics, going down to the detail of every single thread, understanding how products worked, how the ranges fit together, and fundamentally how the Burberry heritage was to be deployed. And we then worked with them to create a kind of high-tech, high-touch environment where staff felt comfortable. And what we did was we used the flagship store as the pilot, and then we're able to track all of the changes that were made versus the rest of the retail outlets, because this fundamentally has to work financially. Another thing we helped them focus on was taking the sort of runway to reality idea. So how we could use brand and style and the catwalk to make stuff more acceptable. You know, this notion of what you saw on the catwalk, you could actually buy, you could go and order it and buy it in store and make that part of your shared experience. And as I said, that pilot store, the flagship store, saw a 25% increase in sales versus the control. And then as the changes to the Burberry customer experience were made, there was an overall 50% lift in profits in the following year. More people buying more products in an environment that they felt excited and helped in. And then the final aspect of this, I think, on purpose businesses is that they stand firm. They help with the how. They first of all influence how they recruit people. O2 is a business that says, look, in order to get serve the customers in the way we need to serve them, we need to turn our own people into fans. We need our own people to be as passionate about the products and services as we are in order to convey that to their customers. So that notion of turning your people into fans in order to deliver a really exciting shared customer experience is really important. We like this idea from the CEO of the Geek Squad. He says basically that purpose acts like a lighthouse. It kind of filters out the people that they want to work in the business. And actually he goes quite a long way. And as I talked about, these sorts of unique businesses doing things in different way. His hiring process apparently is to hire out a cinema and put on all night kung fu movies. He wants geeks working in his business, hence the name. And I think that the general view is that if you're still there in the morning, he invites you in for an interview. His whole point being that he wants geeks, and he wants geeks who've got the interest and the passion in the same types of things that he has, because he knows that they're going to support their customers in the right way. The other area that's worth looking at, I think is really important, is how you empower and trust customers. And again, on purpose brands, I think do this in a really interesting way. So another question, maybe another rhetorical question just to ask yourself is, would you give your house key to a criminal? Would any of you just sort of go, here's the front door key, to somebody that you knew had a criminal record? Well, the truth is you probably have done that. You probably already have. And the reason for that is that many of you may live near a Timpson, the key cutting and shoe repair business. And Timpson are a really interesting business because they realized, quite early on, that they needed to empower their staff to give exceptional service. So they are actually one of the few firms that will recruit ex-prisoners, because over time they found out that ex-prisoners are among the very best at looking after customers. Fundamentally, they are really, really pleased to be given the opportunity to start a new life and get it right. And therefore, that enthusiasm has made them some of the most loyal and some of the best customers. It sort of turns out also that drug dealers are very good at managing the margin. And the other thing I think that's interesting about this business is that they're also building a distinctive culture. So for those of you that have the time to do this, I'd urge you just to do a little bit of searching on the web about Timpson. It's a really interesting business. They have this idea and a philosophy of upside down management. So they see their senior people as having only one purpose, and that's fundamentally to make all of the individual operators as brilliant as they can be. And so they will be judged, interestingly, the senior managers, on how well they know their people, whether they know the birthdays of the people that work for them, details about their lives, and how they support the frontline people who they see as the most important to get the job done. And I think this little video extract just kind of serves to reaffirm that point.
Unfortunately, I was around the wrong type of people and got myself into a bit of a problem because I went to prison for armed robbery. I was a driver in the offence. What would I do after I came out of prison? I've now got an armed robbery offence, which doesn't look pretty if I was an employer. Timpsons, I was told, are coming into the prison to interview. I'd never heard of Timpsons, to be honest. I've never cut a key. 2 of us got picked, one of which was me. I was so happy. I've been given this opportunity now. That could be an opportunity of a lifetime. I got the job and I was going to leave the prison every day at 6 o'clock, cut keys and come back into prison, which is quite ironic really, that I was leaving the prison to cut keys. And I think without a job, it would have been really hard for me to fit back into society. Timpsons don't have to employ from prison, but I think James has spotted a section of people that aren't even looked at because they are still in prison, they are still serving a sentence, and so ordinarily nobody would look at you.
Really powerful example, I think. So then this notion of how you equip your people to deliver a distinctive experience, I think is also a really interesting one. And this is a story told to us by the CEO of HomeServe. And HomeServe are an insurance business that help people with emergency repairs. And what HomeServe do is they have a fund which the individual representatives can use to help solve customer complaints or customer issues. And this story was told to us, and I think serves this point really, which is that one of HomeServe's representatives was called to an old man's house to fix a leaking tap. And the guy was, I think, in his late 80s, early 90s. And when he got there, the guy from HomeServe found out that not only did this guy have a kind of leaking tap, but he hadn't actually had a shower or a bath for over 2 years. And the reason for that was that the bath and the shower were broken and he couldn't get hot water into the bathroom. So the guy fixed the leaking tap. He then applied for permission to buy the parts to actually fix the bathroom. And he went back in his own time and then fixed the bathroom. And the guy was obviously able to have a proper bath with shower for the first time in several years. And the point about that is, imagine working for HomeServe. Imagine what that actually does for employees, for their level of satisfaction, and for working on the things that actually really matter to people. And I think it's quite interesting. The CEO, Greg, has just actually retired, but even during the COVID period, he took on a really interesting role inside the company. He decided that his job was to act as a constant communicator. So he would watch all of the 5 p.m. Downing Street briefings religiously, and then he would very quickly interpret all of that and explain to all of the staff via Zoom calls what that meant for them, what they needed to do, and how they could mobilize. And then apparently he also went and made sure that he made contact with every single employee via individual Zoom calls, just to make sure that they were okay. And one of the ways of sort of looking at the impact of that is apparently on Glassdoor, he went, his approval rating went to a point where he was like in the top 3 CEOs, I think, in the UK during the pandemic. The approval ratings for the organization went through the ceiling, fundamentally because they were demonstrating that they care. And of course, as all of you will know, small acts in business often mean a great deal. The last couple of points, we also know that people want specific things from work. The reason why purpose really does matter in a work context is, and I think Daniel Pink has made this point before, you get really great performance at work when you've got a degree of autonomy, you're able to learn and get better at what you do, and you've got a real sense that what you're doing at some level is making a positive difference to the lives of the customers that you serve. So our belief will be that businesses that do it on purpose have both a purpose, but really importantly, they have a tendency to stand up, to stand out, and to stand firm. And really importantly, those businesses have worked out, what it is that matters most to their clients, to their customers, and to their people. And just as I said at the beginning, for the avoidance of doubt, the answer in the end is never really just price. So that's the first section of this, the first bit of the presentation. What I wanted to do now is, I was conscious I didn't want to talk for the full 50 minutes at you, is I've got a couple of questions that I was going to pose just to get everybody thinking, and we'll go through those. There's a couple of freebies, things that you can download, which I'll show you in a second. And then we can either talk about some of these questions that we raise now, or you can just ask some general questions and share any thoughts that you might have on the subject. So just in the interest of time, the first question I wanted to ask everybody is, does your organization, based on what you've heard today or based on what you've looked at in the past, do you really understand your why? Do you know why you do what you do? Not just what you do, but why you do it. Question 2, have you thought deeply, really deeply, about what matters most to your employees and customers? Because again, just to reiterate that, our point of view is, if you can find where that intersection is, you often uncover your authentic purpose. Have you thought deeply about what matters most? And then finally, question 3, is your employee or service experience truly distinctive? Because many organizations, when they try to improve their customer experience, they try to do everything. They try to turn the volume up on everything. Whereas actually, what you're better off doing, where you can make things truly memorable, is focus and make choices around what you're going to feature and what you're going to fix. A great example of that just to reiterate this point, of course, is somebody like IKEA. IKEA know that not every aspect of their experience is going to be amazing, but the bits of that experience that they know offer an opportunity to be different, such as serving you with an ice cream after you've been in the queue, is a business that really knows how to put themselves in the shoes of the customer and do things that are genuinely remarkable. And I think there's a great quote again for Robert Stevens, which is, marketing is the tax that you pay for being unremarkable, which I think is both provocative and really interesting. But it's that whole notion of, if you really are setting out to put your customers first and to do stuff that's interesting, stuff that stands out, you probably won't need to spend that much on marketing per se, because you will be talked about and celebrated in the way that we know is really effective. So a couple of final things before we come back and have a chat. The first one is we actually have a tool, a checker, for you to see how on purpose your business is. So I am informed, I think it worked when we tested it. If you are inclined to do this, if you hold your mobile phone camera up, your smartphone camera up to the QR code, you should, within a couple of seconds, be able to get access to a link to the survey, which allows you to see how fit for purpose your business is. I'll just pause there for a second just to make sure that you have that opportunity. Okay, that's hopefully done. Let's give you another couple of seconds. And then I talked at the beginning about our book. This isn't necessarily a plug for the book, although of course, if you do buy that, that would be great. But actually you can download the first chapter of On Purpose absolutely free. So again, if you offer up your smartphone to the QR code, you can download that. And it's the first chapter. It is watermarked, it's all fine, but it just stops people forwarding it on and on and on. But you'll have a copy. And if that piques your interest, then of course, by all means, feel free to go onto Amazon and buy a copy of the book. So I promised to talk for about 40 minutes. I think I've just about got there. I'm going to stop sharing in a second so that I can actually see everybody. Thank you very much for listening. That's me. This is Caffeine. That's the book. And now we can stop and hopefully have a bit of a chat, a bit of a conversation. Thanks very much. Adam, if you want to...
Yeah, thanks for that, Simon. That was I've heard this presentation before because obviously work at Caffeine, but you've had some new examples in there, which is really interesting, making it, yeah, some of the recent stuff through COVID is fascinating. I've got a question here from Alex. Alex asked, to small businesses who have little funds to invest in agencies, what would your advice be on how to best develop or refine what their purpose is? So if you were to go it alone without an agency, how would you go about that?
Yeah, I think it's eminently possible. I don't think in any way you need necessarily an agency to help you do that for your own business. I think it's about that point really, what matters most. I think what you need to do is build customer understanding. I think you need to be really clear, fundamentally keep asking, if you like, the why question till you drill further and further down into why you set the business up, or what you are genuinely trying to do, or why you think what you do actually matters. Because by focusing on those things, generally, those of you who are in business or have had your own business, you will know if you focus on the money doesn't tend to get any bigger. If you focus on delivering for your customers and doing the things that matter, often the business performs well as a result. But then importantly, looking at what matters to employees as well, and where you find those two things intersecting, you can usually find something which is authentic. And I do think it's a bit more like the concept of common law. It's about uncovering the purpose to some extent, rather than just inventing one. I don't think it's about invention necessarily. I think it's about drilling down and finding what really is at the heart of your business.
Thanks for that. There's another question that came to me directly here, which is, do you think that purpose skews more towards service businesses where you've got people, obviously working on the front lines, or do you think it's relevant for product businesses as well?
No, I think it's relevant for product businesses too. I think, I don't know, there's products that spring to mind where you think to yourself, actually, they've been delivered to a fantastic quality, or they've really innovative. You know, I know classically Dyson would be an example of a business, I think, which has a strong purpose, a strong ethos at the heart of it. It was fundamentally a product orientated business. I think it's important because you need to create the culture and the focus that's going to deliver for customers. And you need people to think, I'm doing this not just to make the owners or the shareholders richer. I'm doing it because actually we're doing something helpful, interesting. You know, sometimes in this subject, when we present this, we talk about Premier Inn, because the purpose at the heart of Premier Inn is to give customers a brilliant night's sleep. You know, that's not actually really a CSR or a societal one in the biggest sense of the word. But why I think it's quite powerful is because anybody going to a Premier Inn is generally getting up for an important business meeting, or at the weekend they're going to a wedding. What matters is that they can get up and do what they need to do feeling refreshed. And actually, if you're a customer or an employee of Premier Inn, the idea that everything you're doing is there ultimately to do that, I think gives everybody a focus and a sense of purpose, right? And importantly, in Premier Inn, what they've done is they've actually put their investment behind making that happen. So they prioritized fixing air conditioning, which I think cost them about £15 million worth of capital expenditure. And they put the Hypnos beds in everything because they know fundamentally they're the things that matter. And that's what they've decided to focus and feature. And that's, I think, where they've built some you know, memorable and distinctive qualities into their customer experience.
Excellent, thanks. And another question, you know, it seems like purpose is in its heyday at the moment. There's sort of a lot of talk about purpose. I mean, is this just the next marketing fad?
So I would say, actually, in some ways, purpose isn't new at all. It's not new at all. It's just that in some ways we've forgotten about it. So if you go back to some of the people that we would celebrate from previous century, you know, the people behind Cadbury's, or you know, the Bourneville town, or John Lewis, some of these great businesses that were founded, they were all founded on the principle that, one, they should seek to make a fair profit, and two, they would use a significant element of their profits to invest in improving the lives, not just of their customers, but their employees, and by extension, the societies in which they were based. So I think in some ways, the focus now on purpose is a recorrection. It's probably us beginning to look at actually how businesses work and actually how you motivate employees.
Okay, and I think Alex has just posted another question in the chat here. It's kind of linked to this, really. It's about, do you think COVID has sort of accelerated that or put a greater focus on purpose? And if yes, why do you think that is?
I think yes, in some ways, but I also think there's a bit of danger of confusion, which is why I think we've tried to do this presentation today, which is, I think, our point really is, if you can get it right for the customer and for your employees, you'll kind of get it right for everybody else. And that and what I think purpose is that, and a North Star, which then enables you to do not just good works. I don't think it's just about doing good works. I think it's about doing things that are relevant to what you do as a business. So in researching for today, you know, I looked at lots of businesses that have reacted during COVID, and there are some really good examples. Like, I think Netflix, right? Netflix is in the entertainment business. What Netflix has done is seek to support filmmakers and entertainers with various grants and funds. That for me is a good example because it's relevant to the company and what it does. And it's, you know, in the same way that Burberry have made the face masks, they're a manufacturer of clothing, they could make a difference. What I do think, though, is that COVID will have made everybody just step back and consider the value of everything in a broader sense, right? I just think they are thinking about, well, what is it that really matters in society? But you know, we're not saying that profit is a bad thing, right? We see businesses potentially as a force of good. We're just talking about making a fair and sustainable return, and I think that's very much going to be in people's minds.
Excellent. I think that's all the questions that have been posted in. Does anybody else have one that they want to ask Simon? I think we've got a few minutes left.
Please, if anybody wants to come off mute, you know, and please do, because otherwise it's a lonely world. So, Kate, hello, Kate.
How you doing, Simon? Thanks for that.
Yeah.
How do you? I mean, sorry, it's maybe a stupid question, but how do you very quickly? I mean, you've talked about the why, but how do you very quickly sort of, what would be your top tips for really, I suppose, real change in a short amount of time? What would be your top way to attack it?
Yeah, so one would be, as I've said, what matters most. And actually, that doesn't necessarily need to be a great big process. It could be a few of you, I almost believe a little bit in the 1.0, 2.0, right? Start thinking about it. You can always amend or update or change your expression, but just think about that why. And once you've found it, I think the most important thing is using it to drive some intention in what you're doing. So many businesses, small or big, just lollop along without any sense of prioritization, without thinking fundamentally about how they can really make a difference. And importantly, how they're going to be talked about and celebrated and how they can make a difference. So for me, prioritization, businesses that do it on purpose tend to be good at prioritizing and getting stuff done.
Okay,
and that's in all of our gift, I think, fundamentally.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that.
Trevor, are you coming for the mute?
There we go. We've got it sorted, Simon.
Brilliant.
Greetings from sunny Jersey in the Channel Islands. How you doing?
Oh, I know Jersey. Jersey.
Come on.
Yeah.
You know Jersey. You come over here, do you?
Yeah, my wife's family are from Jersey.
Oh, very nice too. Well, I won't ask you to name it because we probably know them. It's such an insular society over here. But anyway, never mind. We're on the way out of COVID.
Trevor, before we go, how do you feel about the Real Housewives of Jersey?
Well, I know several of them personally. How do you feel about it? Is it good for tourism? That's what we want to know.
Well, I was going to say, you know what? I think the biggest winner sorry, everyone, but just really briefly, I think the biggest winner is probably the island of Jersey because it looks stunning in the shots.
Yeah, you're quite right. It's been a bit, but got to take it with a pinch of salt. It's just a bunch of girls that we all know, that love the limelight. But they've been getting a bit of criticism. But live and let live. Really, they've done a good job, and I think they've done fine. Simon, just going back to this, we've been doing quite a bit of work with our image people recently and a branding people. And how important do you reckon, great presentation, by the way, but how important do you reckon it is to have these strap lines that you can sort of summarize the goal of your business whilst being in a lift, your elevator pitch? Are we helping people? We could say we're financial advisors and wealth management consultants. We do this, that, the other, or we're helping people to live a better life or empowering people, changing lives, this type of thing. Is it cheesy or is it good?
No, so here's the thing. I can be quite specific about this. I think all my experience, rightly or wrongly, I think has taught me that you only need three things in a business at the heart of it. One is a purpose, which I think is not for everyday use. I think that's your thing and you choose to deploy that as you build it out and you make it authentic. But you need a positioning. You need to be known how you are seen or want to be seen relative to your competitive set. Again, if I wanted you to think I was clever, the worst thing I could do is talk about being really clever. So I think your positioning is something you use to shape your communications, but you don't talk about it. And then your proposition is the single most compelling thing or things that you can say about your product or service to your customers. And I think on an everyday level, if you aren't clear about your proposition, especially at the moment, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, sure.
Now, strap lines, which are sometimes deployed on advertising, I think are interesting. For me, they're communication devices. They're a bit more tactical because you can change them. But I think if you have a strap line, you have to be really clear about why you've got it. And actually, when you see people deploy them, often it's because they're changing their communication strategy or they want to be known for something else or they're recovering from something that they've done. But if you ask me the most important thing, it's clarity around the proposition and a longer term purpose that guides you as an organization to make the right decisions.
Yeah. All right. That's great. Lovely.
Thank you very much, Simon. I'm afraid I'm going to have to butt in, which I hate doing when we've got a conversation going, but I must. And thank you very much to you too, Alex. It's a really sort of detailed insights into the power of purpose, and I'm sure we've all taken a lot away from that. Thank you too to our delegates for attending, and I just wish you an enjoyable rest of the day with us. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you, everybody. Thanks very much.
Great. Thanks, everyone.